we are interviewing Mr. Herbert Samuel, the Anthony and Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence Laureate in Entrepreneurship in 2015. Mr. Samuel is the inaugural laureate in this category. Welcome to Trinidad, Mr. Samuel.
Thank you. Thank you, Raymond.
So you bring several things together. You bring technology, you bring entrepreneurship, and you bring a kind of background in government work. So you bring the world of wage earning, the world of making your own way, and the world of high technology. So tell us a little bit about how all that came to be. How did you go from wage earner to entrepreneur?
Well, the wage earning part lasted a while. It took me some time before I recognized that entrepreneurship, being a person involved in business, was an interesting thing in its own right. That's probably because I was always an unfocused type of person anyway. So, you know, it takes me a while to find my place in things. And I suppose that is because of my inherent curiosity about all sorts of things. So
but the unfocusedness, I mean, you had to look around, so entrepreneurship wasn't something you were born with, it's something that you come to.
Correct.
Yeah?
It was something I stumbled into. You know, it was a fortuitous accident. But the wage earning thing lasted a while, and it was useful. It was, I would like to think, it was productive. And it eventually led me to a place where I decided that, or I understood that I could do something different.
Okay. But you earned your living first as an engineer, the energy industry, public utility in St. Vincent, and so on. So, but your entrepreneurial activities are in ICT.
Yes, my entrepreneurial activities had to do with the dawn of a new era of possibility, which was all brought about by, you know, this thing that we take for granted now, which is called the internet. If I were trying to do what I'm doing now 15 years ago, I couldn't do it simply because it would have been too expensive. Apart from that, there would not have been enough people to support the ecosystem to support what it is I'm trying to do. It was not sufficiently developed in the Caribbean, simply because the internet was still, you know, relatively new, relatively not well understood, and the value proposition of ICT back then was not what we understand it to be now. Now everybody sort of gets it that, yes, you know, mobile, internet, telecommunications, technology, all of this stuff is something that is here with us now, and that it is something that is changing our lives. Very few people understood that 15 or 20 years ago in this part of the world.
Okay.
So my journey into entrepreneurship segued on top of that sort of understanding, which took a while for me to get, you know, as I mentioned.
Well, the thing you're best known for is the Wellectricity web application.
Wellectricity, yes.
Wellectricity. So tell us, so obviously Wellectricity has to do with energy consumption.
Yes.
So that came from your time working as an energy officer for the government of St. Vincent and in the power company, Vinlec. So tell us a little bit about how you developed Wellectricity and what it is, first of all.
Well, first of all, Wellectricity is a really simple idea that I developed into a social web application, which was really the innovation of you know what I did. the original insight underlying we electricity is a psychological insight, which has to do with the way people consume and which has to do with the way we can influence people to consume less. So what we electricity was really, or is really an amalgamation of a psychological insight to solve an energy consumption problem, which we could consider to be an economic/energy problem, but it does so using a technological basis, which is social media on the internet. The way this whole thing started was really, again, the story of my entrepreneurship path. It was I was working on one thing, and an insight occurred to me, so I sort of stumbled upon this idea that I should do this thing, which had nothing to do with the problem I was working on.
Right. But you didn't do it yourself. You had to collaborate with a number of people in a number of different locations around the world.
To actually build the app, yes.
Right.
But the actual story is this. My best friend, Andrew Richardson, who lives in St. Lucia, he was planning to build a new house. And he wanted to power his house with photovoltaic, solar electricity, and with wind energy and so on. So he had asked me to help him with that project. So I was estimating his historical consumption in his existing house so that we could determine what size systems he would need for his new house, assuming that, you know, the new house would be of a similar, would afford him a similar standard of living as the old one. Now, when I was looking at his existing consumption, his historical consumption, I noticed that although our housing level situations were similar, his household was consuming 4 times as much energy as mine. But his household was only twice the size of mine. So, you know, I sensed that there was an issue there. And eventually what I came up with as this to me was the statement of a general problem. The problem being, clearly there was not a strict technical reason for a 4 times consumption discrepancy. There must have been some sort of consumer-based behavioral issue. And that was the general problem which we electricity addresses. The we electricity web application is really, as I said, a very simple application that provides psychological motivation to get people to reduce their consumption, which has nothing to do with their technical ability to consume, but it has to do with the fact that energy consumption has a human basis. You see, lights and computers don't switch themselves on and leave themselves on. So there is a certain amount of behavior that is affecting our energy consumption outcomes, and the general problem was that how do we influence these behaviors in the ways that we seek to do. And the psychological, the research that was done that I looked at when I was pulling this together suggested that what is needed, or what has been lacking from the previous approaches to the problem, is that the thing that causes people to modify their behaviors most is their perception of how others see their behavior. So it's really, it's the cliche for it is keeping up with the Joneses, but the psychologists have an actual terminology for it. It's called social proof, which is the ability for us to perceive our behaviors in the context of the behavior of others like us. We compare ourselves to similar others.
Okay, but that app has done very well. It's been endorsed by the World Wildlife Fund, WWF.
Yes.
It's done well in the GE's Eco Imagination.
Yes, it's
award.
a multiple award-winning
Right.
application.
So, but tell us now, what came after that?
Well, it's happening as we speak, Raymond. Right now, as we speak, I should be sitting with my programmers in Colombia, in Barranquilla, Colombia, sitting online. I should be online with them, developing the next phase, which we're working on now, which is we are actually working with some people in Malaysia who they're launching a Megawatt Revolution campaign for the nation of Malaysia. Now, this is a private individual launching this, and you know, he's an entrepreneur himself. He is working with the authorities there to get this program launched, and this national campaign is using, he has several components, but one of the components of this campaign is an online tool that will help households to reduce their electricity consumption. And he's using We Electricity as that online tool. Okay. So we are in the process of modifying and customizing We Electricity bit by bit as we go along for that campaign.
Okay, so electricity, energy, online presence, virtual reality and all that. This is not stuff the Caribbean is known for. You know, the Caribbean is seen as a producer, a primary producer, oil, agricultural products, tourism, right? So you have stepped into not uncharted, but certainly territory that few others have. What would you advise a young person or even a teacher who would like to push people in that direction? What are the components that allowed you to take that step?
Yes, I think the advice I would give that person is to ignore everything that you just said.
Okay.
You know, sure, we're not known for this, but so what? We have the fundamental things that are required to do these things. What we lack are environmental and ecosystem type factors. I'll give you a good example. After We Electricity gained a fair amount of international recognition through the GE Eco-Imagination contest, I had two calls, well, emails, followed up by calls from two venture capitalists in the States. One outfit was based on the East Coast, one was based in California on the West Coast. And you know, they wanted to talk to me about We Electricity and what were the prospects for them helping We Electricity to grow. Because this is what venture capitalists do. They look for promising ideas, innovations, developments, and they put money into these things so that the business can grow, the business can scale, and they can make money. We had some interesting conversations. The conversations ended fairly abruptly when they asked me, so, you know, how much money are you looking for to take this to the next level? And the figure I gave them was about on the order of 10 times less than the minimum check that they write when they're financing, you know, ventures. They basically told me, look, you know, we can write checks for nothing less than $3 million. Right. So when you get to that stage, give us a call. So, you know, that story really indicates the things that are lacking in the Caribbean. We don't lack for talent. We don't lack for people with good ideas. We don't lack people who want to make a difference. But we lack the other things that will require all of that to happen to a large extent. And it's for this reason that I particularly personally value the award that brings me here, the Anthony and Sabga Award for Excellence. I think the fact that the committee has understood and has made this award for entrepreneurship is extremely valuable to solving that problem that I think is one of the things that is holding the Caribbean back in doing things like this.
Herbert Samuel, congratulations and thank you for your time.
You are most welcome, sir. Thank you for having me.